What if I told you that the biggest tech companies in the world aren't just successful? They are almost impossible to compete with. Think about it. Why is it so hard to replace Google in search? Why hasn't anyone seriously challenged Facebook in social media dominance? Why do millions of businesses depend on Amazon even when they complain about its fees? Here's the real question. Is big tech winning because they are better? Or because the system itself makes sure they stay on top? Most people believe tech companies grow because of innovation. They think better products automatically win. And yes, innovation plays a role. But that's only a small part of the story. Behind the scenes, there's a powerful economic engine working silently. An engine built on data, scale, and control. And once that engine starts running, it doesn't just grow. It accelerates. These companies don't just compete in markets. They reshape the markets themselves. They create ecosystems where users, businesses, and even competitors become dependent on them. And here's the scary part. The more people use them, the stronger they get. The stronger they get, the harder it becomes to leave. It's a loop, a powerful self-reinforcing loop. This is why a new social media app can go viral and still fail. This is why a better product can exist and still lose. Because in big tech, being better is not enough. You have to break the economics behind them. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. By the end of this video, you'll understand why big tech companies dominate entire industries. How they turn users into assets and the hidden economic rules that keep them on top. Once you see it, you won't look at tech companies the same way again. Most people think monopolies are created in one simple way. A company becomes so good that it beats everyone else. That's the common belief. If a business offers better prices, better service, or better technology, it naturally wins the market, and eventually, it becomes dominant. Sounds fair, right? But this idea is dangerously incomplete. Because if this were true, monopolies would constantly be replaced by better competitors, yet that rarely happens. Think about it. Why hasn't anyone replaced Google? Even though there are dozens of search engines. Why does Microsoft still dominate operating systems after decades? Why does Amazon continue to grow even when sellers complain about it? If better products alone decided winners, these companies would have been disrupted many times but they haven't. And that's where the misunderstanding begins. People assume markets are always fair and competitive. They imagine a level playing field where small companies can challenge big ones simply by being smarter or more innovative. In reality, once a company reaches a certain size, the rules of the game change. It's no longer just about having a better product. It becomes about control over users, control over data, control over distribution, and most importantly, control over the market itself. At that point, new competitors are not just competing with a product. They are competing with an entire system, a system that is already deeply embedded into people's lives. For example, even if a new social network is better than Facebook, it faces a huge problem. Your friends are already on Facebook, your memories are there, your connections are there. Switching is not just inconvenient. It feels like losing part of your digital life. This is what most people don't see. Monopolies are not just built on quality, they are built on barriers. Barriers that make it extremely difficult for anyone else to enter, grow, or survive. And these barriers are often invisible. They are not always illegal. They are not always obvious, but they are incredibly powerful. So, the real problem is this. We keep thinking companies become monopolies because they deserve to win, but in reality, many monopolies are created and protected by economic forces that lock competitors out. Until you understand those forces, it's impossible to truly understand how modern businesses dominate entire industries. So, if monopolies are not just about being better, then how do companies actually become monopolies? The answer lies in a few powerful economic forces that most people never notice. Let's break them down simply. First, network effects. This is one of the strongest forces in big tech. A network effect means a product becomes more valuable as more people use it. Think about Facebook. If only 10 people used it, it would be useless. But when billions of people use it, it becomes almost impossible to replace. Because the value is not just the platform. The value is the people on it. This creates a powerful loop. More users gives more value, gives even more users. And once this loop starts, competitors struggle to catch up because they start with 0 users. Second, economies of scale. Big companies get cheaper as they grow. For example, Amazon can deliver products faster and cheaper than smaller competitors. Because it has massive warehouses, logistics networks, and global infrastructure, a small company simply cannot match those costs. So even if a competitor has a slightly better idea, they can't compete on price or speed. Over time, this crushes smaller players. Third, data advantage. In today's world, data is power. Companies like Google collect massive amounts of data from users off research. Every click, every interaction. This data helps them improve their algorithms, personalize experiences, and dominate advertising. Now here's the key point. Better data leads to better products. Better products attract more users. More users generate even more data. It's another self-reinforcing loop, and new competitors, they don't have that data, so they start at a huge disadvantage. Fourth, switching costs. This is what keeps users locked in. Even if a better alternative exists, people don't switch easily. Why? Because switching takes effort, time, and sometimes money. Think about Microsoft. Businesses rely heavily on Windows, Office, and its ecosystem. Switching to a completely different system would require retraining employees, changing work, and risking disruptions. So most companies just stay, even if they are not fully satisfied. Fifth, and most importantly, control over distribution. This is where monopolies become almost unbeatable. When a company controls how products reach users, it controls the entire market. For example, Apple controls the App Store. If you want to reach iPhone users, you have to go through Apple. That gives Apple massive power over developers. It can charge fees, set rules, and even remove apps. At that point, it's no longer just competing in the market. It is the market now. When you combine all these forces together, something interesting happens. They don't just add up. They multiply. Network effects bring users. Scale reduces costs. Data improves the product. Switching costs lock users in. Distribution control blocks competitors. This creates a system where one company keeps getting stronger, while everyone else struggles to survive. And that's how modern monopolies are built, not overnight, but step by step, through powerful economic loops that are incredibly hard to break. Let's look at one of the most powerful modern monopolies in action. Amazon. At first glance, Amazon looks like just an online store, but in reality, it's a perfect example of how a company builds monopoly power step by step. In the early days, Amazon did something very simple. It focused on growth over profit. While other companies were trying to make money, Amazon was reinvesting everything back into the business. It built warehouses. It improved logistics. It lowered prices again and again. This made it extremely attractive to customers. But here's where the real strategy kicked in. As more customers joined Amazon, more sellers were forced to list their products there. Why? Because that's where the customers were. And once sellers joined, Amazon's product selection exploded. More products attracted more customers. More customers attracted more sellers. That's a classic network effect. Now, Amazon had something incredibly powerful, not just customers, but an entire marketplace. Then came the next step. Amazon started building massive infrastructure, warehouses, delivery systems, supply chains. This created huge economies of scale. Now Amazon could deliver faster and cheaper than almost anyone else. Small competitors simply couldn't keep up. But Amazon didn't stop there. It began collecting data. Every product you click, every review you read, every purchase you make. All of this data gave Amazon deep insight into what people want, And then something controversial happened. Amazon started using this data to create its own products. If a third-party seller was doing well, Amazon could launch a similar product, often cheaper. Now think about the power here. Amazon is not just a marketplace, it is a competitor inside its own marketplace at the same time. It controls the platform. That's a huge advantage. And then comes the final lockdash in services like Prime. Fast delivery, exclusive deals, streaming content. Once people subscribe, they start buying more and more from Amazon. Not because they have to, but because it feels easier, convenient, normal. Normal at this point. Leaving Amazon becomes difficult. For customers, it's habit. For sellers, it's survival. And that's how a company becomes a monopoly. Not by forcing people, but by slowly becoming so essential that the entire ecosystem depends on it. So what does all of this actually mean? The biggest lesson is this: monopolies today are not built the way most people imagine. They are not just created by having the best product. They are built by controlling systems, controlling attention, controlling distribution, controlling data, controlling habits. Once a company achieves that level of control, competition stops being simple, because you are no longer competing with a product, you are competing with an ecosystem. Look at Google again. It is not just a search engine, it is the default gateway to the internet for billions of people. Microsoft. It is not just software, it is the operating system that runs businesses, governments, and schools. Or Facebook. It is not just social media, it is where identity, communication, and relationships exist online. This is the key idea. Big tech companies don't just sell products, they build environments where people live digitally. And once that happens, the rules of traditional competition break down. So what should you learn from this? First, understand that dominance is not always about quality, it is often about structure. Second, understand that small companies don't just fail because they are worse. They fail because they are trying to enter systems that are already locked. Third, understand that growth in modern business is often exponential, not linear. Once these feedback loops start, they become self-reinforcing, which means early advantages matter more than anything else. And finally, understand this: monopolies are not always illegal or obvious. Many of them are the result of natural economic forces like scale, data, and networks. This doesn't mean they are good or bad, it means they are powerful. And power in economics always concentrates over time unless something interrupts it. So the real question is not just who has the best product. The real question is, who controls the system everyone depends on? If you want to understand how money, power, and business really work behind the scenes, subscribe to The Geeky Investor, because once you start seeing these patterns, you stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like someone who understands how the system actually works.